Good morning, and it's a real pleasure for me to really be part of this really distinguished panel. And I was really just wondering how, when I left New Zealand on the flight, I thought I was just going to be part of this panel, and then now I'm tasked with asking questions and moderating and keeping things in order. I was thinking, why am I finding myself in this position? And I think it's only because these people have such distinguished accomplishments that nobody knows me, so I thought it would be better for me on the side, or that being the only male on the panel, that I got the job of just sitting to the side. So I'm going to start it off by a question to the panel, but also give a personal perspective. So in my research, I research skin and especially skin cancer, but also more recently on the biology behind things like wrinkling and those kind of stuff, which we know have more physiological basis than what was known previously. So my original training was actually plastic surgery, but what I found was that my work in India originally was to do with burns, which was sadly almost always dowry burns. And really, when I went overseas, it was to do with trauma, and I went down under, it was to do with skin cancer. But what I found was when most women, and men, but mostly women, when they came for cosmetic procedures, generally I found that the conversation would go like this. And as a writer of fiction, you you become a little bit of an amateur psychologist as well. So I guess I'd ask them, why would you want to have the procedure? And almost always it was, my boyfriend thinks I should have, bigger breasts or lips or so on and so forth. And I'd say, let's talk about this relationship. And eventually I realized I was becoming a good counselor. And I thought I'm never going to use my hands. And so I ended up just focusing on reconstructive surgery, and I do no cosmetic surgery at all. So the question to the panel is, are women under pressure to please others by conforming to others' idea of beauty? Because I graduated 32 years ago, that was a long time ago. So does that idea of beauty still exist? Is it getting worse or better? Start with you, Sonalji, and we'll go.
I'm the wrong person to start with because I never bothered about what people thought about me, especially men. When, especially being a dancer, when one is on stage, one is the queen. And it's the audience which is the captive audience. Saying this, I would like to just put one name before you. The great dancer Bala Saraswati, who was one of the three great dancers of 20th century, along with Galina Ulanova and Margot Fontaine. Now, Bala Saraswati, the contemporary of Rukmini Devi, was tall, broad-shouldered, not with limpid, liquid lotus eyes, small eyes, and nothing to commend her for the so-called feminine beauty. But Bala Saraswati became the epitome, the paragon of beauty through her art. So I think the point is to ensure and to reassure oneself, each one has some quality, some merit, some attribute, and that needs to be emphasized and brought out, by which you feel beautiful, and therefore people see you as beautiful.
Thank you. Manisha?
Well, I feel Sonal Mansingh ji rightly said, it's your art, it's your personality which should be appearing as beautiful. But I'm also observant about this whole pressure in today's time to look more prettier by certain standards due to social media. In Instagrams and in social media, you tend to see celebrities and few beauty pageants and ideals, and through media to look in certain ways. So that's why there is more of cosmetic surgery today. Even though you're just handling the trauma victims, but I was appalled because some very young girl who was an admirer of my work told me, "Ma'am, why don't you go to a skin clinic?" So out of curiosity, I went to the skin clinic. And when I was talking to the doctor, I was telling that, I can't do anything because I have to be very careful. I've just come out of cancer and I cannot put anything artificial and I don't know how that will react to me and I'm very apprehensive. But tell me more, how many people and why people do this and all that. And I was really appalled to know that teenagers were doing changes in their faces and in their bodies because they wanted to fit the ideals of what they were perceiving it to be. So that I think, is scary. That trend, when your features are not even fully formed, the young people, they feel that they are not good enough and they want to, this illusionary idea of perfection, of beauty, they want to achieve through the surgery. That, I feel, is a little scary. And that's why this topic today is very important to address, I feel.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks.
And Manisha, that's exactly why I'm not on social media. Because I think it does, all the things that you so rightly said that it does. I think what's fascinating to me about this question is whose beauty, what beauty? Because, of course, when we think about beauty, we tend to think of it as this universal that everyone knows and understands, but it's the furthest thing from it. So if you look, for instance, even at histories of desire in India, for instance, if you look at men, let's look at men for a minute rather than just women, the ideal of beauty for men, say in the Kama Sutra and in a lot of the Kama Shastras, was an absolutely hairless body and long hair on the head. And so every 2 to 3 days, the man is advised to remove the hair from his body. And now you come to 2019, where other than a small select group of so-called metrosexuals, the ideal of the virile male body is the hairy body. And, no disrespect to anyone in the audience, but if a man loses hair on his head, it's not considered the end of the world. And so this becomes the opposite of what was considered the ideal of beauty a few hundred years ago. And even if we take the same span of time, so even if we're taking, say, 2019 around the world, and we say, oh, skinniness or thinness is supposed to be this ideal of beauty, which all these young teenage girls are aiming for, and then you have to say, oh, really? Is that the case? Because we also associate skinniness and thinness with starvation, with privation, with refugees, with people who actually are on the wrong end of the stick. So there is no absolute value that we can attach either across time or even within the same period of time to the same word, because it means different things for different people. And so when we're talking about all these young girls and boys thinking about being the ideal beauty, we really have to tell them, why don't you just stop for 1 minute and think? Before pursing your lips for that next selfie that you're going to take of yourself, just stop for a second and think about what it is that you're doing.
Thank you. Germaine?
Well. I was interested to learn a lot from this initial go-round. And I was thinking everybody is neglecting to observe that when you read any kind of love poetry or love story, you will be told that what has the lover in thrall is her beauty. And I'm thinking of an English poem, it's an Irish poem actually, that says, "Only God, my dear, will love you for yourself alone and not your yellow hair." Now, this is a problem for women because we know that there's a person lurking in here who's going to get old, maybe going to get fat even, maybe going to get freckled or ill or bald. And somehow you've got to hang on and keep the notion of beauty, which is in a way spurious. I mean, yellow hair, really? It's more beautiful than black hair? No. But it's the thing you've got to boast of. So here you are having to make the most of yourself, so you learn to put on makeup when you're still quite small. you spend hours in your bedroom upstairs experimenting to see if you can get a face. Now, I remember that when I was kind of 12, what I really wanted was a long nose. I wanted an aristocratic nose, and I wanted very large eyes, because they were like the pictures I was looking at in my art books. I was going to be Madonna. I didn't get any of them. And I don't suppose any man has ever loved me for my beauty, but there is a kind of double whammy here, because I was declared the feminist that men like, i.e. that men would want to have sex with. So I was told that I was the beautiful one. It wasn't true. I was no more beautiful than anybody else, but it became a rod to beat me with, that I was flirtatious, that I turned men on, and all this kind of, I didn't want to turn them on. Try turning them off for a change.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about biology. So really, in primitive creatures, the more symmetrical we are, the creatures are, it indicates more microbial resistance. So really, if creatures get bits eaten away by other organisms, obviously they're not symmetrical. So as we became more complex creatures, so there are many studies done and published when in the human form that if you scan somebody's face and the more symmetrical it is, and in blind studies where people have then not been shown who this person is, and you rank actors and actresses and models and anyone on the street, typically the more symmetrical you are, the more attractive it turns out to be. Now I'm just going to tell you a little story because, Germaine is originally from Australia and I teach for the University of Queensland as well. I'm going to tell you a little Aboriginal story about the Jampa Jimpa man, which the dreaming story of the 7 stars. So really, the 7 stars, in India we have a Saptarishi story. In New Zealand, the Maori have the Matariki. In Australia, there's this story of the 7 sisters. And the story goes like this, that the Jampa Jimpa man finds these 7 beautiful women, and he's chasing them, and they're running away from him, and in the end, they run up the highest mountain in Australia, and they jump into the sky and end up as the 7 stars. Now, what's interesting is when I met Aboriginal people, they felt that this was the path of their ancestors being 7 women. And in my latest book, one of the things I've mentioned is that I found it interesting because of the concept of mitochondrial DNA. Because as you know, in all European women descended just from 7 females, right? And mitochondrial DNA is only passed on in females because, as you know, mitochondria, for those who are not biologically inclined, I'll give you a very quick summary. So mitochondria is outside the nucleus. It's the powerhouse of your cell. So in the human male, the sperms use it to swim all the way to the egg, but they only have enough to reach the egg and they die a sad and miserable death. So the human male mitochondrial DNA is not passed on, only the female one. But what we now know is that your symmetry really comes more from mitochondrial DNA. So your symmetry of your face and your beauty at the end has more to do with your mother than anyone else. So the question I had to the panel is, so if I'm looking at the biological aspects of beauty, so how do you define beauty in this context? Is it just luck with genes? Is it more cultural or more biological? For me, it's more biological, but I just have a question. Anybody wants to?
Well, I'll start there with just one thing, that I was considered far too tall for any kind of heterosexual interaction. No one would dance with me because I made them look short, because they were shorter than me anyway. And the symmetry thing is odd because it's an illusion. You and I both know that your face is not actually symmetrical at all.
May I?
Yeah, of course.
I think too much emphasis on outer appearance is detrimental to development of the real appreciation, which shines through your eyes or shines through your vibrations, the aura, the intelligence. There are so many qualities that attract people or that give positive vibrations. There are women who, village women working in the fields. There are women of all descriptions and kinds short, long, tall, black, brown, mulatto, white, whatever. My point is, either it's that innocence, the naivety, or the intelligence, or there's something that shines, that catches your eye. And just that moment you catch somebody's eye, involuntarily, the moment of beauty happens.
Thank you. So what you've just said is, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? Yeah. But so generally, this is a question. But who is it in general over our lifetime?
I just want to finish one, because when you say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, we are always again presuming the beholder has to be man.
I didn't say that. It could
Okay,
be,
no, I'm just saying the presumption shouldn't be there.
Yes. So, but as a general question, which has the most influence as beholders? Is it the advertising industry, patriarchy, persons sitting opposite us in an interview, trolls on Twitter, parents? So I guess where do we get our idea of beauty growing up? So the question I wanted to ask you is, when you were growing up, young, did you think you were beautiful? If so, where did that idea come from? And has it changed now in any way, either positively or negatively, or the same?
I think when I was growing up, I don't remember myself beautiful unless somebody told me. So it's always when somebody says something back, one realizes, at least I realized that. And we really didn't care. When you're young, it wasn't really important to look beautiful. I was a sports person. I was dirty all the time. I was learning classical dancing from my grandmother and my mother. I was a basketball player, so I was very sweaty and very dirty and very tomboyish to an extent.
Sure.
Wearing long skirts with big so that sense of beauty and all that was introduced very lately, when people started, when I was an actor, when I had to put on makeup and then be in front of camera, and when people started commenting, oh, you're beautiful and you're photogenic or XYZ, to me, it came much later. And, but also somehow, it became a little bit of a burden for me to look pretty and look good all the time. So when I was shooting, I would pay attention, but right after that, I would just want to remove my makeup and remove my wig and remove my costumes and everything and just be like my tomboyish self back. And so that's how I evolved slowly. And now I'm watching how people are and how I am. Being a public figure, somehow it has been like certain perception, certain decorum, certain one needs to match, I feel, as an actor, as an actress, as a, but in my private space, I would want to be just me, and this whole tag to be removed, because it shouldn't be like a burden to me. That's how I feel.
It's an interesting thing you said about acting, because I was in US speaking at the Museum of Natural Sciences, and I met this actress, and she said to me, nowadays you need 3 stylists and 2 makeup people to get them ready.
Absolutely.
But she said, the longest it takes is to get the just out of bed look. So it was funny. So just to look natural,
so
like you
true.
just got out of
So
bed,
true.
she said took longer to do that makeup than to just put more makeup.
So what I want to really tell my the audience here is what people see as a perfection is actually, there's a lot, it's nothing natural. There's a lot of effort which is gone to look the way you look. So, when that impression, when it's in a profession, when you're doing it's fine, but if a school-going girl tries to copy that, then there's a trouble, I feel.
Madhavi?
No, I was just going to add, to pick up on what you were saying about natural. And we often try and conflate natural, desirable, attractive, beautiful, and there really is no connection among them at all. There's nothing natural about beauty, despite your mitochondrial explanation. I think there's nothing natural about beauty because it requires a lot of hard work and or a lot of confidence. I mean, I think when we were young, I certainly, thought I was, I don't know whether I thought I was beautiful, but I didn't give a shit. And I was, that's the arrogance of youth maybe, but it was just absolutely wonderful not to be burdened by that. But there is a way in which I think the phrase that we are missing out, to go back to what Germaine was saying, because of course when you think of beauty and you think of popular culture, the phrase that comes to my mind immediately is Beauty and the Beast. And that there always has to be a beast for there to be a beauty, and there always has to be a beauty for there to be a beast. But I just want to add, and we can talk about this more later, but I just want to add that we would be mistaken were we to think that beastliness is unattractive. So to think that only beauty is attractive is actually absolutely wrong. To be a beast is extremely attractive and gives rise to a lot of desires that may not be socially sanctioned, but that are no less desirable for that.
In every version of the movie I've seen, the beast is always a male.
Yeah, exactly. We need a cross-dressed
That's
Beauty
exactly.
and the Beast, yeah.
What I would say, now that we've got to this point, is the real killer in all of this is the association of beauty with youth. And you start to age so quickly, even as a teenager, you feel your hips spreading, you think, I'm finished. You feel your bottom getting heavier. Women are fat-bottomed creatures, get used to the idea. But no, they have to have boys' bottoms. Then they have to have spectacular breasts as well. And all these things they can get hold of. But the thing they can't, spending fortunes, is freshness and youth. And I was doing a morning show in England not very long ago, and I was moaning about my dewlap. I was saying I look like an old cow. Look at this thing hanging down here. It'd be so easy just to get rid of it. And the woman doing the makeup said, oh, but you can. She said, everybody has tucks here. I mean, a tuck, a wig. I mean, they have this hoisted up and that taken out, and it doesn't work. Their faces are getting older, but they're also getting less interesting. And that's a real fool's bargain. And if somebody does love you, he loves you for the real, well, you hope, not your yellow hair, because that's going to go grey. Although, have you noticed that even, this annoyed me this morning, even women politicians are not allowed to have grey hair. They've all had a sort of mousy brown rinse, politician mouse colour. And you just think, why bother? You've got too much else to do, I hope. That no.
I have a point to say here. It's about youth. I remember in my social media, somebody pointed to me saying that, oh, you look old, as if it's like a curse. And aging or becoming older is like a curse. It's like, abuse. And I really felt like saying, so what? I will be 50 soon, and I have few wrinkles, and I call them wisdom lines. And this is the nature, as if, I wanted to give back, but I withdrew, and I said, let it be. So there is a chapter in my book which I have addressed this fascination, this obsession of looking young and thin and to be beautiful. And we know many cases where, again, trying to be youthful. I feel what Sonal Mansingh said about the inner beauty. If there is more stamina, more good health from within, more kindness in your being, and you're just bright, there's something shines from within. I think that's far more attractive than this nip and tuck we do, constantly trying to,
I just want to add that the burden on looking young is very gendered. So women are expected to look young, and in fact, I think not expected to look like little boys, but expected to look like little girls. And I think this is a particular facet of heterosexuality. And I've certainly addressed that in my book too. The idea that
Yeah.
you have to have a hairless body, the idea that you have to have a high-pitched voice, right? The Lata Mangeshkar ideal for women, not to have deep voices, but to have high-pitched voices, like a little girl, hairless body, stay thin, stay skinny, and of course, the term of endearment par excellence in a heterosexual couple is the word baby, right? And so this idea that women have to be little girls in a heterosexual relationship is really scary. And, you know, not to mention, of course, pederastic. And there is the sense of, you know, men can grow up, get gray, get older, but women have to be babies.
May I put in
course,
a little
of course.
word? Thank you. By the way, I'm exactly quarter of a century older.
And you're
And,
really attractive, man.
Now I want to shift the focus a bit. There is something called humor, wit and humor. Haste rehna chahiye, not ha 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 all the time, I mean slapstick, but there has to be a sense of being light. Okay. I have made a slight shift in focus in the parliament. उनकी शामत आ गई है कि मुझे वहाँ डाल दिया है. 6 months I've been there in Rajya Sabha, but in Central Hall, everybody meets across Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, both the houses. And I make no bones about it, and cutting across party lines, I have friends. We have Adda. And I say, taking up from whatever has been said, that I look around at you all men, I don't see one single attractive man. And they, oh my God. And I say, look at the body line. So many come with the stomachs walking in first. There is a kind of a manliness or a smartness. I mean, you may not be broad-shouldered and broad-chested, but when we talk about women, when they look at women, why can't women, and I do, and many women do, they look at men straight in the eye, they look at the body. Yes, and I see some men wilt away. Now, what I'm saying is, we have to shift the focus. Enough about beauty, the standards of beauty, okay. Before the mobile phone and television and the heroines and the models, you know, the fashion shows came, we had our temples, which set the standards of beauty, so to speak. They were the ideals. Nobody said that you have to look like that. Now the difference is, as Manisha and everyone is saying, that you have Lady Gaga or XYZ, Lady Gaga gone, whatever. You have all these ideals before you, and you better look like them. The big difference is that gap that we have left. There has to be a buffer, and there has to be common sense, respect for each other.
Thank you. I guess I'm picking up on, Germaine, what you said, that you said women are fat-bottomed creatures, right? So the question I was thinking is, I was looking at the origins of beauty pageants were only for men in Greece originally, and they were all well-oiled men. And then they allowed women, and when they allowed women, the women with the plumpest posteriors were declared the winners. So I'm just going to tell you a little story which may illustrate that beauty can sometimes be culture specific or depending on where you came from. So I had this patient in New Zealand who came from Tonga. He was recent immigrant from Tonga. And Tongans, if you don't know, Pacific Islanders, they're the biggest race in the world. They're absolutely massive. So anyway, he comes in, and one day a week I teach creative writing to children, so I have a doctor covering me. So he usually comes in and she brings a photo of her children and she puts it up. And so he comes to see me the next week, and he doesn't even look at you. He's always looking down, very shy. And he suddenly looks up and he sees these photos of these white kids, and he says to me, "Doc, are those your children?" And I go, no, that's the locum, doctor. And he goes, "Good. For a minute I thought you were messing around with this Pakia women." God, that Pakia and Mari in New Zealand means, white women. And he goes, "God, they've got fat asses and no tits. God, they're ugly." So the point I was trying to think is, somebody had come straight from there, wasn't exposed to any of her advertising or other ideas. Straight away thought, God, these women are so ugly compared to the bigger, big carved women from Tonga whom he found attractive. So the question is, one, is there an Indian idea of beauty? Is it different now? So that's a question. I'm opening it out. And of course, Germaine, you can add, is there a new idea of beauty around the world? Is it changed from when you first started writing about this? So this is for all of you, really, so you can start.
The book I got into more trouble over than any other was the book I wrote about the boy. And I was trying to tell people that you assume that the female nude is the subject of art. That's a simple mistake. It isn't.
Closer to the mic.
It isn't until the 19th century. And then we start having the grande horizontale, women lying around on canvas. Before that, the ideal of beauty is a boy, and the boy has nothing going for him but youth. But if you look now at the fuss and bother that's going on in Hollywood about the use of young people by photographers and film producers and so on, the people who have brought the most significant actions for sexual abuse have been young men. And they have brought civil cases, which meant they had to risk money, and they have won them. But then, of course, there's the appeal, and it will go on and on. This saga will run for years. But we have assumed that the woman is the object because she's the one who's thinking about it. She's the one who invests in beauty products. It always annoys me that the boy doesn't have to wear any makeup at all. He is perfection. He is an angel as he stands. And when we sexualize it and make it a female duty, we are actually insisting on our inferiority, and we should resist it, I think.
I mean, I completely agree, and I think I was referring to this earlier on when I was speaking. If you go back to a lot of older texts from the Indian subcontinent, across Sufism, bhakti poetry, I mean, any number of these things, temple sculptures, sex manuals, any number of these things, the kind of gendered difference that we now associate with beauty and beauty products simply did not exist. And so the manuals for beautification are addressed as much, if not more, to the men as they are to the women. The products and the makeup that men and women are supposed to use are identical. In fact, the Kama Sutra has an entire section in which the man is told that if your beloved, your female beloved, gets caught in the rain, as some of you might have on the first day of JLF, so if your female beloved gets caught in the rain and comes to your house, you have to touch up her makeup. Why? Because you are the one who knows best how makeup is applied. So the sense of this gendered division increasingly, where makeup is pummeled at women, women are the ones who are the objects of advertisements, all kinds of campaigns, is a very new capitalistic phenomenon, and we have to remember that capitalism thrives on what colonialism thrived on, which was divide and rule. So let's divide men from women, and then we can sort of target one group and get maximum revenue from them. Just as colonialism divided Hindus and Muslims and tried to say this was natural. This is not, in fact, historically true. Not only did the Greeks have beauty pageants for men, Renaissance, English Renaissance paintings, if you did not have flesh on your bones, you were not considered attractive. In Shakespeare's famous play, Othello, Cassio is described as lean and hungry because the thin look was a suspicious look. You could not trust someone who was thin. And so these ideas change and change and change. And we must not forget that these ideas always have a history.
Absolutely. I think this whole thing of size 0 and being thin and beautiful and youthful is all marketing, it's all media hype, and it's all what we see models and actresses do, and we try to imbibe on that. And you know, what really also is something we need to address is look at the Barbie dolls. So we are teaching the young girls from very young onwards, this is how they should look. And if you look at the Barbie dolls, they are fully grown women with big boobs. and with blonde hair and probably a belly button. Um, so what are we actually feeding to the young children? That this is how one should look, this is beautiful. And so there's so many aspects we need to address. What are we actually educating the young minds? What are we feeding them? And is it really healthy? Would they grow up to be confident in their own skin and pursue their dreams and ambition, or they're going to be always stuck with how they look, and feel incomplete and try to match these illusionary standards of beauty and judge themselves and others. So all these things I think we need to address as well.
Okay. Sonalji,
Yeah.
just a question on, I said about the Indian concept of beauty.
I was
That's
coming
clear.
to that, yes. The simpering looks below the eyelashes, and this is more in vogue now with all the television serials and whatnot. I was talking about this, that Sarojini Naidu, for example. You know, we are talking about role models as from films or from television serials, from models or whatever. I want to present to you modern Indian women who are neither glamorous nor beautiful, and they did not conform to any known demand of beauty. I was talking about Sarojini Naidu, for example, the freedom fighter, the lady, the great poetess. She was not beautiful at all. She was plump, she was dumpy, she was dark. She was everything that is not beautiful. She was very beautiful. Her name remains today. Whether it's Kasturba, whether it's Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, Aruna Asaf Ali, these are, or Kittur Chennamma, or Lakshmi Bai is of course very much in vogue now with Manikarnika. I think we have somewhere lost out. I'm talking about India in the Indian context, yes, and the post-independence context especially. We have somewhere lost out on presenting kind of role models who, as I said in my first round, have something solid within them, tattva. Tattva jisko kehte hain, sattva, the essence of being, who they were. Instead, now we have all this flimsy, ephemeral role models who are no role models, because role models should not vanish overnight. They should not evaporate. So who are the actors, actresses? They come and go. The models, they come and go. Shamoli, who started, you wouldn't know that, but Shamoli was one of the first Indian models when the fashion thing began, the whole movement, about, I think, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, and she hit Paris and everywhere. Before that, we had Niti Ravindran, when the Doordarshan started, the television. Most of you were not born, perhaps. Black and white screen. Niti Ravindran with a big mole on her right or left cheek, black mole, short hair, sari, and she would sit never straight like that, and she would just sit like that and read the news. She was the anchor, and she became the role model. So, as I said, self-confidence, doing what you do, knowing what you do, why you are doing it, that's enough. All this marketing, branding, whatever, it's all like gubbara. You just puncture the balloon, it goes whoosh.
Thank you. Sonalji, I did know Shamali because I'm 52, so I was born. One other question. So, in preparing for this talk, I looked at a similar survey done about 4 years ago, which was called The Truth About Beauty by some cosmetic brand, and they said that 9 out of 10 people in the audience wanted to change at least one aspect of how they look, and 3 out of 4 said they felt tremendous pressure to be beautiful, and only 11% of people in the audience use the word beautiful to describe their looks. But looking from here, you all look pretty beautiful. So can I have a poll of hands going up for people who think they're beautiful? Very good. So at
All
least our
men,
message
women,
is getting
everyone
through.
should put up their hands.
That's right. I didn't say women. So this question is particularly for you, because being a classical dancer and stuff, I was just thinking about the concept of beauty within specific fields, because I was reading a comment by Simone Biles, the American gymnast, who was saying that because now a lot of African American women were denied the opportunity in earlier because it was the Russians and the others, and they had to be very slender and not necessarily muscular to be gymnasts. So being a classical dancer, can anybody with any shape learn, or do you pick specific people with a specific look, or is there I don't know. So it's just, I'm just being half the devil's advocate, but I want you to answer that.
Yeah, I think my first round again, I'd mentioned Bala Saraswati, and classical dancers dance, whether they are tall or slim or... By the way, I want to just give you one small thing, that at one of the functions in Bombay, about 5-6 years ago, there was Pandit Jasraj, there was Pandit Shiv Kumar Sharma, there was Pandit Hariprasad Chaurasia, and I was there to felicitate another musician on his 60th birthday. And of course, you know, the classical musicians with their wonderful peacock dhoti and their whole gang. And there is a certain kind of aura created. And I myself, I laugh all the time, and I talk, and I walk, and I jump, and I leap. And on the stage, of course, it was all very heavy going. So when my turn came, apart from felicitating and all, I said, by the way, Pandit Jasraj had come to sing on my 21st birthday in Bombay, because his eldest brother, who was his guru, told my mother, मेरा भाई तैयार हो गया सुन लीजिए. Said, yeah, Sonal का जन्मदिन है, उसको बुला लेते हैं. So I said, Jasraj ji, Shiv ji, Hari ji, they were blessing everyone and all that, Jai Ho. I said, I bless you three. May you become dancers in your next birth. Why? Because then you will know the musicians can be bald, without hair, dark, fat, short, whatever, doesn't matter. You sing or you play your instrument. But the dancer, as you were asking, has to have, she may not be beautiful, she may not be slim, she may not be whatever, but it's a physical art. It's a visual art. It's a physical art. Now the demands on the classical dancer, therefore, Indian classical dancer, I'm saying, as you said rightly, not the Western ballet, is that the whole face has to be mobile. Eyebrows, eyes, neck, the entire body has to be mobile. Each finger has to tell you a story, the feet, the knees, everything. So that kind of body intelligence is expected from an Indian dancer. It's not just leaping and all that. Also, she has to know the literature, sahitya. She has to know music, tal, rhythm, melodies, stories, and she has to be intelligent enough to know the mood of the audience. It's very important to draw them in. It's not enough to be just beautiful and dance away and say bye-bye. No.
Thank you so much. And I think it's time for us to get to know the mood of the audience on that note, so we'll take some questions. So we can start at the back, and you can direct your question to any member directly so they can answer it. Somebody's taking the microphone.
Good morning, all. Hello, ma'am. My question is that it is said, or people comment, that beauty is associated with arrogance. Beauty can be anything. It would be facial beauty or intellectual beauty. But it is said that beauty is associated with arrogance. What is your take on it?
Asking who?
Everybody. Anybody can answer on that.
No. I think it's just an
It's better to ask.
assumption.
Germaine, you want to go?
And we were talking as if we give the Barbie dolls to our daughters. And somehow we are teaching them that somehow this is part of what they are supposed to be. I know lots of women who hate Barbie dolls and who never let their children have a Barbie doll, and the kids bought the damn things with their own pocket money. We've got to understand what the actual sales technique is, and it plays on something that as a feminist really hurts me, which is women's insecurity. They're all, even when they're tiny, they think they're not good enough. They have curly hair, it should be straight. They are plump, they should be skinny. They are forever opting on the thing that they are not. And we have to ask ourselves, where does this come from? Why are they so hard on themselves? And I don't think it's something we have to take the blame for. It's more subtle than that.
It's marketing, which I was saying. I wasn't saying that we were doing it. It's just marketing. And what we see in advertisement and what we see size 0, the products which is available. And I was giving an example of a Barbie doll, which is, that's what I
just
want to...
But it seems to me that instead of saying, because I'm worth it, what it actually says is because I'm not worth it.
Absolutely.
I just want to address that question a little bit, because I think it's a very good question. And I think it sort of puts its finger on something very important, because on the one hand, if we think of beauty as natural, we paper over all of beauty's indebtedness to wealth, to privilege, class privilege, caste privilege, racial privilege, gendered privilege, and we think of beauty as this anonymous universal that some people have and some people don't, and I think that's a big mistake, and that's perhaps where your association of beauty with arrogance comes in. However, I think we have to hang on to an idea of beauty as discernment, which is to say, we can't say everything and anything is beautiful, because then we don't need a concept of beauty at all. But we have to be able to say, A, that beauty is not natural, it is not trans-historical, it is not trans-cultural, it involves a lot of work, it involves a lot of ideology, but beauty as a standard of discernment, for instance, you know, I'm a professor of literature, how do we assume that some literature is more beautiful than others? And that is not a standard that stays fixed across time. But it is a standard nonetheless, and that doesn't necessarily have to be associated with arrogance.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi. I'm Pooja Mishra. I'm here all the way from Pune, and that's a lovely session, a beautiful thought of a theme. I just wanted to ask all the lovely ladies on the stage who exemplify beauty in their own way that, I mean, if a girl has been told from childhood to live under this cloud because there is a gang of influential people who want to be her and are reinforcing negatively daily that she can't make it, she's not good enough, and she keeps trying with a blind faith, no, I'll prove myself that I am beautiful, I can make a difference. So eventually she doesn't get redeemed and she keeps trying, and then one day she dies. I mean, I just want to ask you, with what hope is somebody who's being bullied, is outnumbered, but yet not giving up, supposed to live, to feel beautiful? I hope you got my question.
Sorry, did you? I got a little lost in that.
People are imposing on you. How do you live when you feel outnumbered by that?
What I meant to ask was, if you're bullied into believing you're not good enough, how do you feel beautiful?
It's almost universal for practically every website that tells you you're lovely. There will be 50 more that tell you that you should kill yourself. What we would like to do is raise young women, and I'd say young men, it can be just as vicious, to resist that and to be proud of what they are and proud of their own racial characteristics, for example. Being able to say, you know, I am this kind of a person. I am not a Tongan, but I'm not a Pakeha either. I'm me.
I really think, to pick up on something that Manisha said earlier, I really think education is key. I think we really have to encourage the beauty of thinking among people. I think it's amazing to me how little people actually think these days. How unsexy it seems to be to think. And if you pause, as I said, even for a moment or two to think about, well, where is this idea coming from? Who subscribes to it? When? Where? To what end? You will see immediately that this is not a universal by which you have to abide in order to be beautiful. And so really for me, what's much more important is the beauty of a complex idea, the beauty of a complex thought, the beauty of being able to think. And so to that bullied child, and unfortunately you're right, there are far too many of them, to that bullied child, and this is an age-old defense, you have to say, I'm smarter than that. I'm smarter than this idea that is bullying me, and I'm going to think my way through it. That is our only hope.
Thank you. And also, I think with the advent of social media, it makes it worse because everybody has direct access to people, whereas in the past, you know, sheer geographically, you could only get bullied by so many people. But now suddenly they can find you much more easily. So it is much tougher for our young people. Oh. Any other questions?
Namaste. I'm Ankita from Banaras. I've come from Banaras. So I have this question for the panel, the esteemed panel there. It disturbs me when I see that in a city that's still under development, Banaras, the mushrooming of beauty parlors and beauty salons, the more we are talking about women education, women empowerment, the more women I see stepping into the parlors. Who do you think is responsible? The society, the industry, or the women themselves? Thank you.
I have something immediately comes to my mind. There is nothing wrong in wanting to look pretty and beautiful and stepping into the parlor as long as you know your self-worth. You are confident and you are doing what is making you whole as a human being, and you're working towards that. Getting into the parlor suddenly from one end to the other end to ostracize that and to criticize that is also not correct. I feel we need to be, so what if somebody wants to look pretty? So what if somebody wants to do the hair in a certain way? We shouldn't really criticize that. I feel the emphasis should be on you as a human being on a whole. Are you wholesome? Are you confident? Are you, there are so many other aspects of us. Are we focusing on that as well? Or just blindly trying to look beautiful? That's where I think we should debate.
I think if I get the hang of a question, Banaras, Varanasi, Kashi, बहुत ancient, purani nagri hai. And perhaps the dilemma is, the irony, that इसी पुरानी शहर में जहाँ पुराने लोग और पुरानी मान्यताएं, traditions, and where they are still very, very strong about their beliefs, how do the parlors gel with that kind of an atmosphere? People from all over the world come to experience that. तो उसमें innate वो तो कुछ है नहीं, संघर्ष नहीं है, conflict नहीं है. लेकिन एक बात ज़रूर है कि आज even जो सब्ज़ी बेचती हैं, जो कपड़े धोती हैं, जो झाड़ू पोंछा करने आती हैं, जो रास्ते पे चलती हैं, we are not talking of the so-called educated class. I don't want to make these kind of, but आम वो लोग भी इतने मोबाइल पे चिपके हुए होते हैं, the ladies, the women, girls, छोटे छोटे बच्चे मोबाइल पे सेल्फी, उसमें बहुत कुछ देखते रहते हैं पार्क में बैठ के, रास्ते में चलते. तो आपके सामने जो चित्र आते हैं, उस चित्र का छाप असर तो पड़ता है. सो पार्लर खुल गए तो एक लास्ट हाफ अ सेंटेंस, स्पाइडर said to the fly, come to my parlor.
I just have a funny sort of Sharad, I just have a funny anecdote to add to that. There's a new beauty parlor sign in Delhi, a men's beauty parlor, and they advertise they specialize in bridal makeup. So for the bridegrooms, you know, so that is sort of, it's interesting because makeup is still gendered female, but it's for the men. So
I guess there's nothing wrong in going to a beauty parlor if you're doing it on your own terms is the message I would have, really.
Yeah.
I think there's somebody here who was waiting. One last question, sorry.
One question.
I'm afraid my question has actually been subsumed of what happened before. I feel what's wrong is the old truism that beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Beauty should actually come from what you feel comfortable with. And Madam Greer, if I'm 62, when I retired, I gave up dyeing my hair. Then I felt I didn't like that look, and I went back to dyeing my hair. I don't want to be made to feel uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Because that's not the right thing. You should not change one prison for another prison. My question, however, is why do we have only 4 very beautiful and intelligent women on this panel?
He is the ringleader.
I wasn't the organizer of this. I'm just a participant.
I think a chance to a gentleman with the hat.
Well, I would like to congratulate all of you for conducting such a beautiful show, which I've seen first time that the way it has been discussed all about the beauty, Beauty lies in beholder's eye. Beauty is deceptive. Beauty can put it in different forms, And one thing I would like to say, if you go into yoga and meditation, you get beauty, in that, also.
I agree.
That is very important. Being spiritualistic, nothing like it. That's my point,
Thank you.
For that,
Okay, to answer your questions quickly, I will say, the standards of beauty is always been through male gaze. So probably this is a female perception of the beauty that we are expressing. It's through the female point of view. That's why we are here.
Thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking Manisha Koirala, Germaine Greer, Madhavi Menon, and Sonal Mansingh in conversation with Sharad Paul.